He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He is a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Do you agree with that?
He's a war hero because he was captured, okay?
Donald Trump's infamous moment in 2015 when, as a candidate, he disparaged Senator John McCain's status as a war hero. Those comments open up the new book by editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, entitled On Heroism, McCain, Milley, Mattis, and the Cowardice of Trump, of Donald Trump. And Jeffrey joins us now. Thank you for being on. Congratulations on the book.
Yeah, congratulations, Jeff. We're going to get to the book in 1 minute. I do want to underline something that I saw you talk about on Washington Week. Of course, since you started hosting it, more people watch that than watch the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. It's really changed the landscape of everything we do.
Kids
get it. He does a really good job at the weave.
He does the weave, and you notice kids in school. If you go to school now, they've got the Goldberg.
No one,
right?
No
they've
one
got
weaves.
his haircut.
No one weaves like I weave.
I know. You're a weaver.
The weaver.
So you made a point to your the Weavers. He's also a folk fan.
Yeah.
So Jeff, you made the point to your guests that Donald Trump will be brutish at Arlington, going places that no other politician has gone. He will have bizarre tweets daily that suggest he's deeply unwell. He will flip-flop on issues like abortion and immigration and just about everything else, lie constantly. And yet the media will pretend like this is 1996 and it's Clinton Dole. And they'll go, yes, but Kamala Harris had Tim Walz with her in her first interview. And this is, I notice the pace of, and I hate criticizing the mainstream media because mainly they do things right, but there is almost a desperation for them to pretend this race is like every other race. And the false moral equivalency is getting pretty bad. And we're just one day past Labor Day. Talk about that, if you will.
Yeah, no, I mean, this really struck me. I mean, it should have struck all of us about 9 years ago, right? But it really struck me when he did his long soliloquy on batteries, electricity and sharks. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's better to be killed by a shark or by a battery falling into the ocean. And then, last week it was this another sort of incredible disquisition about irrelevant things. And I was listening to these and I'm thinking, my God, if Kamala Harris spent 10 minutes on stage randomly talking about whether, first of all, he doesn't even understand how batteries work and how stored energy works. And if he spent last week talking about how people don't eat bacon anymore because of windmills, that's not normal. I mean, it's not normal, and we can't act as if it's normal. And so we're operating with a double standard. Kamala Harris, we parse her speeches, her interviews, as if she's a serious human being who is taking slightly different positions on X or Y or Z, and we're holding her accountable, and that's fine, and especially fine in a normal circumstance. But here we have a situation where she's talking about things within a normal bandwidth of political discussion, and he's saying abnormal things, and we're treating them the same. And there's two different races going on, and there's two very different kind of candidates. And I'm just saying, let's just say what it is, which is this person is outside the bandwidth of what politicians have been like through our modern era.
And by the way, that's not an argument against holding Kamala Harris accountable for what she said she believed in 2019 and what she believes now. It's an argument for holding Donald Trump to the same standard, obviously.
Right.
We touched on this Arlington flap of last week, where the United States Army, not some liberal podcaster or something, confirmed that the Trump campaign physically pushed aside somebody who works at Arlington, who, by the way, tells you everything about it, did not want to be named or press charges because he or she feared the backlash or the hate or whatever that would come his or her way. But it gets at your book on heroism and all these moments that have been stored away and now informing the narrative of Donald Trump, including the piece from General John Kelly in the fall of 2020, where he confirmed to you that Donald Trump talked about suckers and losers at a cemetery and wondering what was in it for them, talking to a man who'd lost his son not so long ago at war. So tell us a little bit about the idea of the book.
Yeah, and just to be clear, John Kelly said in 2023 that to another network that. Donald Trump has done X, Y, and Z, but my first story in 2020 was based on numerous sources from inside the administration. Trump spent a lot of time arguing with those sources, as if there wasn't a long previous record of him disparaging veterans serving soldiers, generals, and obviously John McCain. Look, this all is rooted in John McCain in a kind of way. That 2015 moment was one of the most bizarre moments in American political history, because a lot of people, including me, thought, oh, well, there's one thing that a Republican candidate especially can't do, which is disparage war heroes. Like, that's not in the Republican playbook, right? And he does this, and I thought to myself, well, that's that for Trump. Back to our regular programming. But he went up in the polls after that, and obviously he won the presidency. So I was trying to understand. For a long time, trying to understand why voters are reacting to him that way, and then the more time elapsed, the more you realize that disparaging the military, disparaging the generals who worked for him, disparaging wounded veterans. I mean, saying literally, I don't want to see them. I don't want them in a military parade because it makes me feel bad, or it's gross, or it's not pleasant to look at. This is a regular occurrence. That's why this Arlington Cemetery incident doesn't stand alone. He doesn't understand the role of the military in the psychological and social and patriotic life of America, and he never really has. And so this book is an attempt to try to figure out why he has these attitudes. And the truth is, I don't know why. The one answer I would give is that he has contempt for everyone. We notice it more when he expresses contempt for people we generally hold in very high regard, including and especially John McCain and the various generals who did work for him for a time.
So, Jeffrey, a number of the prominent figures, Mattis, Kelly, Milley, who in all various ways and forms have spoken out against Donald Trump, have warned what he could provide, which in itself is such a change in norms for the military. They're all featured prominently in your book. Tell us a little bit about them, and particularly Milley, who you've described as sort of the heart of what you've tried to do here.
So the Milley piece is an important piece of this. General Milley was put in a position that no other chairman of the Joint Chiefs was ever put in, which is to say, dealing with a president who very overtly and acidly was trying to politicize the military. Remember, presidents have arguments with generals all the time. President Obama had arguments about troop levels in Afghanistan. The back and forth is normal. In the case of Donald Trump, he would discuss with the Joint Chiefs ideas that were illegal. Right? I mean, he would talk about shooting people in the legs. Why don't we just shoot demonstrators in the legs? American demonstrators. And I think that was one of the triggering sort of mechanisms in all of this, when he would continually insist that the American military, I mean, the regular Army, not National Guard even, but like 82nd Airborne, should be deployed against American citizens. This came up obviously in the summer of 2020, especially. And so people like General Milley were put in a position that no other generals have ever been put in, which is, and this is my words, not General Milley's or General Kelly's or General Mattis, dealing with a president who is emotionally unstable and intellectually limited. In other words, Donald Trump had no understanding of civil-military relations, right? Donald Trump had no understanding of why a military would be apolitical. Donald Trump literally told John Kelly the general, Marine general, who was then his chief of staff, he literally said, I don't understand why you guys can't be like Hitler's generals. Hitler's generals always listened to him. Kelly, by the way, pointed out that Hitler's generals repeatedly tried to kill Hitler, but that's just a factual aside. So that's what we're dealing with a person like General Milley. All of them face this in their own way, which was like, what is this man saying? Again, outside the normal bandwidth of what people talk about in a democracy.
And obviously he attacks anyone who crosses him, including someone as respected as General Kelly or General Milley. Before we let you go, Jeffrey, I want to ask you quickly about what we're seeing in Israel right now. Obviously, the bodies of 6 hostages recovered over the weekend, shot at close range, according to the Israeli government. And now we're seeing these protests, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets in Tel Aviv. Where does this moment go from here? Pressure being applied to Prime Minister Netanyahu. He seems not to be terribly concerned about the pressure that's being applied domestically. Where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, I think the mystery for a lot of Americans who we don't live in a parliamentary democracy is how could a man at 20% approval ratings and his party controls just a quarter of the seats in their parliament, how does he maintain his grip on power? And that's because of coalition politics. Everybody who's in his narrow coalition is there for reasons of self-interest or party self-interest. So imagining that one should never underestimate Netanyahu's ability to stay in power. He's been doing it for 15 years, mainly in one contiguous stretch. So I don't necessarily see the opposition overwhelming this. But, you know, something is breaking in that society. They had 250,000 people out on the street on Saturday in just one city, demanding that the government put its primary emphasis on negotiating a hostage release rather than the total defeat of Hamas. I think most Israelis would like to see the total defeat of Hamas, precisely for the reason that we just talked about, executing these kids, these young hostages, and a million other reasons. But I don't expect Netanyahu to give up power easily, and he's outfoxed generations of opposition leaders. So I don't know where it's going, but I do know that Netanyahu is not going.
In the meantime, 101 hostages, Israeli hostages, still somewhere inside Gaza.